Hello and welcome to the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are your hosts, Chris and Philly, co-founders of a multi-award-winning functional medicine practice, serving busy people with energy, mood, and gut issues.
While busyness, addictive doing, people-pleasing, and perfectionism might be the norm, it's not normal, and it's a major contributor to health issues.
Our goal with this show is to give you a holistic root cause approach to healing your body so that you don't have to continue doctor or diet hopping or popping a gazillion supplements hoping something might stick.
So get ready to heal your body, get your spark back, deeply connect with yourself, and step into the life of your dreams.
Let's dive in.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. Today you're going to hear Chris and I interview Georgie Collinson, who is one of Australia's leading anxiety therapists for women with high functioning anxiety. I came across Georgie on Instagram when a client shared one of Georgie's reels with me, and I'm like, Georgie, I sent her a message. Georgie, we are speaking the same language. Come on our podcast, please. Part of it was because I just really wanted to connect with her. She's super gorgeous. You're going to love her. She's got a big heart. And I wanted to dig into her brain, her philosophy, because a lot of what she talks about is so similar to what we practice inside the Ending Body Burnout method. So Georgie is also a naturopath and a nutritionist and really gets that it takes a holistic body-mind approach, including healing the inner child to break free from anxiety. So we loved our chat with Georgie, Chris and I. There are a lot of times where we are just kind of like brain blown by her beautifulness. She is real, honest, authentic, and is such a sweetie. And I know that you're really going to love this podcast. If you love what Chris and I talk about, this is going to be a really juicy one that looks at both the physical and metaphysical, specifically around anxiety, because that is what Georgie specializes in. All right, so let's dive in.
Welcome everybody to this episode of the Ending Body Burnout Show. We are so excited to have our very wonderful guest, Georgie Collinson, on the show today. Georgie, thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have a chat and really get to know a little bit more about you, your story. We've got some good questions to ask you today. Let's get right into it.
I'm excited. So I came across you, Georgie, through one of our clients actually, and I'm going to read the post that she sent me a little bit later because I'm like, yes. So there were so many things that when I started like stalking you on Instagram that I'm like, yes, you're saying all the things and with such clarity as well. And you're an expert in anxiety. So we're really going to focus on anxiety, which is a big part of, so on our Ending Body Burnout show, a lot of people are struggling with perfectionism, overwhelm, stress, people pleasing, and it often displays both mentally but also physically in the body, and anxiety is a huge part of that. So we're excited to dig into all things anxiety with you.
Beautiful. Yeah, there'll be so much overlap, especially as the anxiety I work with is high functioning anxiety. And this is just so prevalent. This is like, we can't stop. We're going at 100 miles an hour. We have that perfectionism, that constant pressure, that need to please. And on the outside, everyone would think we've got it all together, but on the inside, it's usually a different story.
Yeah. So let's talk about your story then, because I feel like from what I know and have read about you, that this is where you're at, doing all the things, look like you had it all, but inside, not so happy.
Yeah. So look, I mean, we could go back. I work a lot with the subconscious mind and inner child healing. So there's a lot of like, I could go all the way back to childhood with this story, but just to, cut that long story short, I was always that high achiever in high school. I was the good student. I could sort of work that system at school and memorize a lot of stuff and dump it into a test and do well. And everything was kind of like plodding along pretty well. I had a level of anxiety at that point in my life that it seemed was serving me. But when I was 19 years old, my parents unexpectedly split. Well, seems not so unexpected when I actually look back at everything and all the signs, but you never know this stuff when it's your family and when it's your situation, because that's just normal to you. So my parents split. My dad left my mum. And it was devastating. Like I suddenly this, solid rock of my family was just, I describe in my book, The Anxiety Reset Method, that it was like rock turning to quicksand. And so I just felt like I was sinking. And in order to cope with that, that's where my anxiety really hit a new level, because it was jumping in to try and protect me. It was like, okay, like these unexpected things can happen in life out of the blue. And I wasn't prepared for it. So now anxiety was like, we're going to prepare you for it and make sure we can look out for everything that could potentially go wrong, and what can we control? So my anxiety set to work kind of controlling my food, and I got really into nutrition. And that's why I became a naturopath and a nutritionist, came from that desire to control everything and protect myself. And, there's definitely some merit to that, which we'll go into, about how our nutrition can impact how we feel and our experience of life. It's a really important part. But I went too far and I went into orthorexia, which is where you have really intense food rules. It was the era of clean eating, which is so funny because it's so not a thing anymore, but it was like really big at that time of my life. And I got obsessed with that. And these became new ways for me it's like the more perfect I could get myself, the more I thought I would be safe, and I thought I would be okay. And it looked like, looking a certain way, wearing certain clothes, having certain friends, doing really well in my studies and in my work. And inside though, yeah, not doing so well, feeling really, really like stressed out. I would have been teetering on that burnout. I would say I never quite gone into that zone of, okay, like I can't get out of bed for months kind of thing. But I've had my, certainly a week of that where I'm like, oh my God, full stop. I can't keep going. And that's pretty much my story. And I was like, there has to be a better way to do this, and a way that we aren't burning ourselves out and making ourselves sick, to achieve what we need to achieve in life, to have the success that we want, to create real safety, not this sort of chasing the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that we think we're going to get if we're perfect, if we finally make everyone happy. So that's where I started to look at deeper causes here. And my naturopathy is a huge part of that, exploring the gut health and those links with our hormones, etc. But I had to go even deeper, because I always loved helping other people with anxiety too, when I was working as a general naturopath. And then I was like, oh, hang on, there's something else going on here. And I had experienced myself so much benefit from exploring my subconscious mind and learning all the things that I didn't know that I didn't know. So this is like, you can't guess what's in your subconscious mind. This is why talk therapy can only get you so far, when it's just, two people having a conversation. There's always going to be so much that we miss. And when we close our eyes and we guide our brain into an alpha brainwave state, there's so much more information that we can access. We have these epiphany insights. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. And you can actually start to take your power back and shift that programming. So all these ideas of like, if I'm perfect, I'll be safe. I started to look at where that was really coming from and rewiring that program in myself. And then I did further study to go and be able to do that for other people too. So that's all part of the work that I do now.
Yeah, I love it. So many things. And I'm just like nodding my head. I'm like, I see my story in your story. Even there, oh, okay, to heal myself, I have to eat really perfect. And I also had orthorexia, and like everyone is like, wow, you're so strong. I can't believe you're not eating sugar for like a year, including fruit. Wow, you're so awesome. And, it's like getting more of that external validation, and it just feeds that controlling perfectionism nature. And then needing to go deeper as well. So we're not just a physical body, we're so many other parts of ourselves. So the root cause, because we're always like, what's the deepest root? What was the deepest root here? And I know that you've done so much work on yourself already. What do you think was the deepest root that stemmed into everything else?
Well, it's so funny because, and I hear this a lot from my clients, of this idea of, I put so much pressure on myself. I hold myself to high standards. It's me. I'm doing it to myself. And when I explore that and we go back to childhood, we actually find out, well, hang on, where did you pick up that that's the standard? Where did you get the impression that this is what perfect looks like? We learned it somewhere. We weren't born with that. We were conditioned with it. So it's not you putting the pressure on yourself. It's a pressure that you learned and absorbed, and it's not even a decision. It's an unconscious program that happens when we're children that says, this is how I'm going to fit in and belong in this family and be accepted, not be rejected, and survive. And so we often think, okay, that's going to look like really controlling parents and, that are pushing you to do things that you don't want to do. And sometimes it is. But in my case, so looking at where was this perfectionism coming from and this like sense of pressure and I've got to be doing all the time. I didn't have that from my parents. I didn't have parents that were saying, you've got to get, A+ on all your tests. And why is it not? It wasn't like that. However, it was, oh my goodness, look at all those A's. We're so proud of you. You're such a high achiever. And look at your sister, and she gets such high scores too. And there was a general, bar that was set. It's more subtle than we realize. And so we pick this stuff up, and both my parents are very, accomplished people in themselves. So again, this sort of expectation is subtly communicated to us as children. And for me, it was really unlearning a lot of that and looking at, well, hang on, yes, that I've got these people in my family that have achieved a lot of success, but do I really want their life now that I'm an adult and I can choose this? Like, is that the trajectory and the choices, and do I want to be that? And not that they're doing their own thing, that's them. But when I ask me, what do I want? It's different. And that's where we can start to reconnect with this authenticity, like the real you that's just, I actually just want to go, frolic in the trees for an hour.
Yeah.
I want to go swim in the beach, and I want to help people, and I want to be creative in my work, and we can start to connect to those parts of ourselves. And it's different for everyone what that looks like.
Love it.
Something else too, like a subtle programming that I see as a pattern, and I certainly had it too. Good girl, good boy. It's like, okay, this is what it is to be a good girl or a good boy, and far out I have to catch myself when I say it out loud to our kids now as well.
Yes.
It's like, you're such a good girl. It's like, oh, hang on. What am I really trying to say here in this moment that's going to help my child to also to have healthy beliefs and expectations about herself?
Yes, that is such a tough one. And it's funny because I recently worked on that pattern with a client, and it was very much the good girl, and it was trying to help her see that, because she was quite happy being a good girl. She's like, yeah, but I'm a good girl. And I was like, well, yes, but if you set that expectation that you have to be a good girl all the time or a good person, like, gender regardless, then what happens when you make a mistake? What happens when you're human? What happens when you feel some really heavy, dark emotions? Like, is that fitting into the category of the good girl? Because these are all parts of the human experience that we limit ourselves into just this little box of good girl. And whenever we fall outside of that, and we're inevitably going to, because we're human, we're going to think, oh, I'm bad now. I'm measuring up. I'm not likable. This is the part of me that, I got to repress that. And this is where, we really start to get some, panic attacks coming out of the blue and things like that, because there's these parts of us, huge chunks of ourselves that we don't want to look at. We want to bury and suppress because we don't like that part of ourselves, because we've learned that other people, or usually our parents, didn't like that part of us. They don't like it when I'm having a tantrum. They don't like it when I'm being difficult or stubborn or whatever it might be. It's so tough, isn't it?
So tough. So tough.
This is in my experience was a little bit different. It wasn't in school, be good, get the grades, all that sort of stuff. Mine was on the court or on the field in sport, and I know I got a lot of validation from Dad. Chris, win at all costs. Like, you've got to do this. Like, if you win, you're great. Like, I don't remember him saying those exact words, but I definitely picked that up. It was when you're winning, you are my favorite. When you are the best on the court, you're amazing. And then I guess it's unsafe to lose. And so when I'm looking like I'm losing on the court, I would get angry. I would drop into fight. Definitely wasn't flight. It was always a fight complex response. Sorry, and I think that win lose dichotomy was my anxiety showing up. Like from what you were saying, like my version of what you were saying. You're awesome if you're winning. You're not good enough if you're losing. And then until I started working on that stuff, I started to unravel. Yeah, actually, Chris, some people win, some people lose. You're always going to be good enough, even if you're not winning. So anxiety can definitely take a lot of different shapes and forms, can't it?
Definitely. And that's again, that reinforcement of win, win, win will create inevitably this huge fear of being, what if I'm the loser? What if I lose? Oh, I can't be that. I can't be that. That's the worst thing we can be. And yet every single one of us is going to lose many, many times in our lives, because that's the nature, especially in sport, especially if it's win-lose all the time. Like you cannot go through sport winning all the time. So yeah, it's big, isn't it? Like, and I guess the answer comes back to, especially like we have to do this starting with ourselves, but then this hopefully translates, and it does translate into how we show up as parents and for the little ones and the younger generations. But it's validation regardless of the win or the lose, validation regardless of the being good or misbehaving or being bad or making a mistake. It's like, can you love yourself when you are telling yourself I'm a loser right now, or when you're telling yourself I'm too emotional, I'm so sensitive, or I'm no one would want to be around me right now? Can you tell yourself actually that's not the truth? And you're still lovable right now, even now when you think you're not lovable, you actually are. That's where it starts to shift. And that's where then we have more space to be with the parts of our children who, are not pleasing to us, because we're able to see the parts of ourselves that aren't pleasing to us.
Huge.
So good. We'll probably circle back to some of that a little bit later, but can we talk about the physical body? So there's a naturopath, nutritionist, body systems can definitely impact mental health and anxiety. What do you see as common patterns?
Yeah. So, I mean, the gut health comes back to, as a naturopath, we were just like obsessed with the gut and how it impacts every system in our body.
It's like the root of all issues.
I mean, I would say it's a tie between gut and nervous system. Like the two really are feeding each other, and there's this cycle going on. And people often say, do I start with the gut first, or do I start with the mind first, or the nervous system? And it's like, we actually need to come at both at once, because they enhance one another. So I like to work with gut healing for people. Hormones are another important one, of course, especially for women. Of course, men are going to experience, fluctuations in their cortisol levels and potentially testosterone as well. And that can be a part of it. But with women, it's just so like raw overt. The premenstrual anxiety is a huge thing, as well as perimenopause and any age over 35, like we're potentially in that zone where we're starting to go through that transition. So progesterone levels are so key. And when we're stressed and we have high cortisol levels, we're going to deplete our progesterone. So there's this balancing act that happens. And the more we work on our stress and we support ourselves and help balance those cortisol levels out, the better we're going to be able to naturally produce our own progesterone. But at the same time, we can support our progesterone levels with certain herbs and nutrients that can help the process. But then the gut is going to be a helpful ally there too, because it helps us to clear out and detoxify excess estrogen that can build up in the body. Everything is feeding everything. It's always so fascinating.
Yeah.
Love it.
With the gut too, sometimes if I'm talking to a client, And I'm like, ooh, I'm kind of suspecting something there. But they're like, I don't have any gut symptoms. But like, I don't get bloating. I can eat McDonald's every day. It's fine. Not that I choose to do that, but if I do, it's okay. What are your thoughts?
Have they turned 40 yet, those people?
I mean, you always get these anomalies, don't you? Of like, my grandmother lived to 98 and she smoked cigarettes every day. And, like you'll always have that. But I think there's an element of a real disconnect from our bodies and a lack of awareness of what we're actually feeling. Because so many of us are living up in our mind all the time. So we're solving problems, we're working from computers, we're thinking. How just being aware of how much that takes you out of your physical body. And then we ignore the fact that actually I'm thirsty and I need to drink water. We ignore the fact of, I just worked through lunch. Like it's so easy to ignore that when we're really driven and motivated and push. So then we may well ignore those more subtle signs from our body. So I'm very thorough with my gut health questions. Like I'm like, literally, what is the consistency of your stool? Like, let's get into that. And I give them options.
Yeah.
I'm like,
let's take some photos.
Are we talking chunks? Are we talking? No, I don't need photos. I don't need photos, Billy. But because we only know our normal. Like what's normal for you is what you think is normal for everyone. Because who's talking to their partner and their, family members and friends about what their poo looks like. Like we don't do that. So if you might actually have chronic bloating, but that's normal to you because that's all you had for years and years. So really thorough questioning is kind of where I go with that. And also I've got that little part of me of okay, is there a disconnect happening with the body? Is this person really aware? And sometimes, coming back to that after a week can be really helpful too. It's like, oh, actually, I did notice that, actually every bowel motion this week has been loose, and then we can start to see that. A lot of people aren't even aware if they're going every day, right? These kind of basic things that tell us so much about the health of the body and how everything's functioning. So that can be part of it. And yeah, if there's no symptoms and, that's not the body system that's kind of like really screaming out for support, then I tend to, I think the gut can always do with a little bit more of our fermented foods, a little bit more of our bone broth and those kind of like, let's add it into, I would be more adding it into the diet rather than, okay, we need to go on like a big supplement plan here. Yeah. The less supplements, the better in my mind. Like if we can get it from food, that's awesome. But then I'm kind of like, okay, there's room now for more magnesium and more things that could nourish our nervous system and support that brain functioning as well.
So good. I'm thinking of a client. I think we tested for SIBO, not because she was claiming to have any major gut symptoms, but definitely histamine intolerances, allergies, all that sort of stuff. SIBO came back positive, and it was interesting after she treated it. She's like, didn't realize I had bloating because now my tummy feels different.
Yes. And that's a good point too. You're right, Philly. Like when we have those, so maybe it's not the gut that's, calling out the signals directly in a way that we can notice or pick up, but it's the allergies, the hay fever, the funny symptoms, or maybe we're really getting like PMS that is associated with ovulation symptoms as well, which often is a histamine response. And then of course we've got to go, okay, well, what's the root of that? And see that's a good one, which I can't believe still how undiagnosed and untalked about. That's bad English, but not discussed. SIBO is like it's so prevalent, it's everywhere, and it really changes people's lives when we look at it. It can show up as chronic bloating, but it can also be a little bit more subtle, like those chronic skin issues or, itches, random things.
Yeah, the random things. It's like, let's look at the gut. Okay, I'm going to read something. So this is how I came across you, and it was an Instagram reel. I can't remember what you were doing, but I'm going to read the caption because I'd like to talk into this. So you said, it doesn't make sense to me that we tell anxious people who already believe there's something fundamentally wrong with them that they have a long life disorder. We imply that they will always have to tiptoe around and manage that pesky, inconvenient, problematic anxiety, which keeps us stuck as an anxiety battler, fighting against ourselves, feeling anything but calm and peaceful. And yet these are the exact same things people who benefit so enormously when I help them see that there's actually nothing fundamentally wrong with them, and there never was. I love that.
Yeah, there's a lot in that, right?
There is.
I mean, I can encapsulate this perfectly with a story of a client. I was doing a session with her last night, and it's so nice because sometimes I can like tuck my clients into bed. So I tucked her into bed with this session. And she was told she was told by a medical professional that she was very unwell, and that if she doesn't find the right medication for her, and she's been trying different medications, and every time her body's just like, it's making her anxiety worse. And that's, by the way, not to say medication can't help people and that it's not an important tool at times. Okay, it can be, but every time she's experiencing, and she's been pushing through for weeks and weeks and weeks trying to find the right medication. And this medical professional told her, you're not going to get better unless you find the right medication. And you are unwell, and you need to go to hospital for this, to go through this medication transition. And I could see how disempowering that language was, and how much that was reinforcing her own fear and belief, and this inner child part of her that was so scared of being helpless and powerless, and that she was going to be stuck this way. And while it might be that finding the right medication is part of her journey, I wanted to remind her very much so that she has the power within herself. It's not going to be this outside external thing that quote unquote saves her, even though we all long for that and we all want to find something that's going to save us. We are so powerful. And when we are consistently reinforced with this idea of you can't, you're not going to be able to work your way through this, and you don't have the power, like that messaging, you're broken, you're fundamentally like, sorry, that's it for you. It keeps people in the cycle. It keeps us believing that, like I'm powerless in this feeling. So the more we can move into an empowered place, the more we see better results, the more people start to build their confidence again. They're like, oh, wow, I actually was able to sit with that wave of anxiety that came through my body, and it didn't kill me, and I'm still here. And wow, for the first time, I just experienced what it's like to feel a sense of power over it, not it like having power over me. I often use this example of, it's like when you're standing at the beach and you see, all of us in Australia, we're very used to surf beaches and we know how to like handle those waves, right? But when you see that wave, like a big wave coming towards you at the beach, there's that moment sometimes of fear, like, what if this one's going to really topple me over? And if you've ever stood there and tried to fight the wave and like not go in the way that we need to, you will get churned up in that washing machine of the wave, and we call it being dumped by a wave, and it feels horrible. And that's often what it's like when we try to fight our own anxiety and resist it and push against it and do all the things that our instincts tell us to do, which is distract yourself, go away from this feeling. This is pain. I don't want to be in this. But when we learn, and there's a little bit of a leap of faith required here, literally, when we learn, if you dive into that wave, you dive under it, you're going to glide through gracefully. You're going to be safe. You're going to feel great on the other side. You're going to be okay. You're going to come out and you're going to be like, Then we have this sense of, like I'm in charge of the wave, even though there's this huge force coming towards you. Any kind of emotion, we like our negative emotions, but especially anxiety, it works the same way. So when we know how to work with that emotion, everything changes. So what these messages of like, you're not powerful, you can't do this, are telling us to do is just like stand and let the wave kind of take you. Because I teach people how to dive into that wave and how to feel powerful through that process, and it heals them. People get better when they believe in themselves, and everyone has that power inside them. As long as we are ready and willing to take that responsibility, and we're ready to look honestly and see the inner child in us that's so scared and powerless. And we can go, hang on, that's just my inner child. That's not me. That's not all of me. That's just a part of me. And I can help this part of me. And I can say, hey, I've got you. I'm going to take you through this wave. It's all right. We got this. And then it starts to change.
Yeah. I love that.
So good.
I think about that too, like a lot of people who listen to this show and clients burnt out, which often shows up as chronic fatigue or autoimmune type conditions as well. Or fibromyalgia is a big one too. And getting the same sort of narrative too. It's like you got an autoimmune condition, like you're gonna have this forever. We don't have a medication for you, so you're just gonna have to learn to live with it and manage it.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to like we live in the emotional dark ages. So like no one knows what to do with these emotions. And we didn't know when we were children, and our parents didn't know how to guide us through that. We couldn't regulate our own nervous systems when we were children. So we grow up into adults and the waves come at us and we're like, I don't know what to do. A lot of our medical professionals are also not trained to work with emotions and understand that. And the reason I bring emotions up with autoimmune as well is that we often and almost certainly will see behind an autoimmune process past history of trauma or even the subtle traumas. So, trauma is not just like our getting in a car accident or some kind of abuse situation or a war zone. Trauma is any scenario that caused you distress that has not been resolved. That could have been so many subtle things. It could have just been growing up feeling like you always had to compare to your sibling that was always doing better than you or something like that. That's traumatic. Or having a parent who was so busy trying to love you and trying to, provide for you, but so inconsistently available. That's traumatic as well. So these emotions build up in our system, and for some of us they will express as things like autoimmune conditions. We don't have, whenever it's idiopathic, or we don't know where that came from. Yes, we do.
Yes, we do.
And the way that we are going to treat things in the future and the way that medical system has to evolve is to look at this and start to explore those deeper causes behind it. And what's so amazing is we're not powerless. We've got somewhere to go. We've got somewhere to explore. And I love that as much as I know these experiences, whether you get diagnosed with a really scary health condition or something that's really inconvenient, or it's anxiety and panic attacks and that kind of thing, it can feel like your world is ending. It can feel like that's it for your life. And it's very scary, but equally these experiences are happening for us because they make us stop, and they make us really have to get honest with ourselves and look at this stuff. Because why would we go back to our inner child stuff and look at our past otherwise? Like I wouldn't have. It's really uncomfortable sometimes doing that, and it's painful, and it sucks at times, but gosh, it's worth it on the other side. Like when you get it, and when you have claimed back a piece of yourself again. So yeah, that's just such an important message I want to share with people, is like, I know it's like cliche, but it really is happening for you. And it's the sign of life that wakes us up and has us go and explore these parts of ourselves. So we don't have to pass on the same, good girl message to our children. Like we can catch ourselves as best as we can. We don't have to tell our kids, you got to win all the time, and that's the only time I'm happy with you. Then we can all start to heal, and the whole of humanity gets better. So you're participating in that with this journey.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I was thinking about when you're talking about resistance of going back, and it's like, oh, it's challenging and it's uncomfortable and it's hard. I think my resistance to going back was, that's going to take a lot of time, and I got to do this. Like it's the high achiever, the go patterns that were almost made it feel impossible to stop and slow down and go inwards and go back, because there was a fear there that if I did that, the whole world is going to crumble because I'm not achieving. Which is so funny, because when I leant into it and trust the process and actually did that deeper inner healing child work, it's like, oh my gosh, like actually things are happening in my real life without a lot of effort now. and it feels good.
Oh my God, life just gets better and better when we do this.
Mm-hmm.
The coolest thing, because we become more and more of our authentic selves. We're unlearning who we thought we had to be. And then it just feels so much better. It's like, oh, like I used to pressure myself all the time. I used to think, because I have this natural, I don't know if you know much about sleep chronotypes, but I have a dolphin sleep chronotype. And so I naturally get this burst of energy late at night. And I'm like, I want to party, even though at about 9 p.m. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty tired right now. 10 p.m. I'm excited. Like,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, yeah.
I'm a
And
bear, so I'm like 10 to 7, love my sleep,
oh,
hibernate.
Billy, you don't get this world then, but like the experience of a dolphin, it's a whole different thing. And I used to shame myself for that because I thought, oh, I have
Mm,
to be like other people and I have to get to bed earlier. And once, when you learn that, okay, this is actually you and that's okay. Like that's just me being me. And I'm actually kind of wired that way biologically and it's okay. And I can work with it and benefit it. And I don't do any work before 10 a.m. in the morning, most mornings on a
yeah.
weekday, unless there's an exception. Like I've managed to set my life up to work with
Mm,
that. And that, feels so good for my nervous system. So, I've spent probably 10 years of my life shaming myself for my sleep, thinking, oh, I need to get to bed earlier. I need to get to bed earlier. And I don't have to do that anymore. This is what I mean about like how it can get better and better. We just learn to kind of be okay with who we are and how we are
mm,
in the world. And it's not like, who decided that, you have to start work at 9 a.m.?
yeah.
Who decided that?
Yeah.
Like, I know sometimes our jobs do, but like sometimes we can also work with that and negotiate these things.
Yeah. That I think about my sleep pattern. So 10, if I'm lights out 10, feeling good, great. Energy's awesome, feeling good. Now I had this want to watch Netflix at night. Which even though in my practitioner mind and like all the research is like get off screens before you go to bed for like, I don't know, an hour or two. But I just really, really enjoyed watching Netflix. But there was this period where I was fighting against that. It's like, okay, no, I'm going to be a good girl tonight. I'm not going to watch it. I'm just going to read a book. And then there'd be resentment and then I'd watch it. And I found that when I actually just surrendered into, you know what? I just really want to watch a Netflix episode. And I know that if I turn it off before 10, I'm going to have a great sleep and I'm going to feel great in the morning. And when I just allowed that to be, it was so good. There was no guilt. Like I would literally feel anxiety in my body in the past when I watched something before bed. Whereas now I actually just enjoy it because I want to do it.
I love that. And it's the same thing with like, I've been on a big journey with emotional eating too. It's the same as like when you let yourself just enjoy the chocolate, like it changes how that food, and I know there's research behind this. I'm not going to quote the
Mm-hmm.
study, I don't know where it is, but I know there is research that shows that foods react differently in our body depending on whether we're stressed about the fact that we ate this bad food or
Yeah.
not. So like even that is the same thing. And it's not to say go like eat chocolate for every meal every day, but
Mm,
like when we just let ourselves be, the more we can say, and that's okay. And that's okay. You're a human. We have this
mm,
fear that we're gonna lose motivation and we're gonna just spin off the rails. And I think there's a place for discipline too.
mm,
But equally, when we're way too far in that pressure zone, I think men actually tend to operate better in that sort of like with discipline and more of that, go for it. And you're in a sort of like
mm.
competition zone. Women, we really need space and we really need like, to just sort of, you know, be able to relax and allow ourselves to do our things in our own time more. I don't know, Chris, you tell me if you think that's
Oh,
that's
Chris is
right.
pretty has quite a lot of feminine
I
energy.
can, I
Like
can,
you're describing Chris right now, the
I'm like a
spaciousness and the
yin yang.
like.
I'm very much both.
Well, you are. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, you are both.
Yeah.
Depends on the
You
time.
can just flip the switch.
Yeah, but I think that's been a process to get to that
Yeah.
point. Whereas no, I agree, Georgie. Like, the natural way, if you don't work on it, would be do, go, discipline, sacrifice. For the cause. Like I think that's a very natural masculine energy.
Mm.
But I think, yeah, that balance.
Mm.
When you switch from insecure 20 to 35-year-old guy, you work on those insecurities, you get secure, and then you switch into dad, granddad phase. That's where, like, I think that feminine energy can come out, I think, and shine.
Yeah. We all need
You're
a
really sexy right now.
Wow. Thank you.
He's talking about his feelings and his inner work. We love that.
All right, last question. And I think it will go along with what we're talking about, but I'd like to get quite practical in what this actually looks like. So if a listener is listening to this and they're like, okay, how do I do this surrender thing? And how do I listen to myself? Because you feel like when we can surrender, that gives us ultimate liberation.
Mhm.
How do we
Yeah.
get to that point? How does someone know when they have that? And I'm guessing listening to the inner guide enables us to do that too.
Yes. I mean, look, there is no, I could say, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, but there is no single process to get here. So this is something that we all have to find our own way of getting to that surrender. Some ways that I kind of help guide people with this is just imagine right now, like when you're really stressed and everything feels really serious in your life, just imagine you're driving a car and you're gripping the steering wheel really tight. And then imagine what it's like when you just loosen your fists, and it can help to like actually do this and have your fists and loosen them and just notice yourself like loosening the grip on your whole life. And all this stuff that you think is so serious, remember, it's not true. These are just conditions in your mind. They're limitations that you were programmed into you. It's not the truth of who you are, just things that we're doing to survive. And all that survival energy, even that's coming from fear. And fear is ultimately an illusion, covers over the top of the truth of who we are. There is a true self underneath that. And if we can drop into that, that's who we were born as before we were told who we were meant to be. So you can start to question, okay, like I really feel like I have to do this, piece of work today. It has to be done today. We can start to drop into, well, does it have to be done today? Where's that coming from? Well, if I don't do it today, I'm a loser. Or I'm not the good girl. And then we start to get a bit of a clue. The more awareness we have of those old patterns and programs, then we start to get a bit of a clue of like, oh, this is like an inner child thing. This isn't actually who I am. Like I'm an adult now and I get to choose the rules of my life and what makes me worthy and valid and have that approval. I can give it to myself. And I've decided whether I complete this task today or not, I'm still worthy and I'm still lovable. I know that's hard to do. And then we can start to, maybe let's say you're really pressed and you've got other stuff going on in your life and you're not going to be able to get that task done. Like realistically, you just can't. Okay, well, maybe we can start to explore the options. What if you emailed your boss or your team and you started to say, hey, I need some help here. I'm not going to be able to get this done today. And you can come from that adult part of you that knows you're still worthy, asking for that, rather than that inner child that's like, oh, I can't ask because now I'm going to get in trouble and I'm a bad person and I'm like, going to be like they're not going to like me anymore. It's like you're human. You're allowed to do it sometimes. Like we all need some flexibility, some space at times, and help. We need help with each other.
Yeah.
So that's a long kind of, little flowy answer to your question, but I would say we have to figure out within ourselves and contemplate on what really is true and get really clear on who we're not and these false ideas that will constantly come at us. We're always going to be invited to, bite that I'm going to say apple of like your ego and like I need to win and I need to be the best and this is how I show that I'm perfect, or whatever makes us hold tight onto life. And it's up to us to just have the conscious awareness and develop that over time to realize that's not the truth. The truth is you are enough right now, even if that doesn't feel real. That is the truth. So how can you find a way to actually feel that that's real for you and kind of come to that understanding. It's like for a long time, I was like, I hear about this thing, oneness. And I'm like, what does that actually mean? I spent years, really feeling into that and thinking about that. And I would say only at this point in my life am I deep in understanding what oneness is. The fact that, if I'm angry at another person, they are mirroring back something to me, and a part of me, that there's something in me that I'm angry about. Like we are all just the same source energy inside each other. And that's why, Philly, when you asked me before we hit record, you said, are you worried about, like, is there anything you don't want to share about your personal story? No, because anything in my experience, it's just a flavor of the human experience that everyone can relate to. Anything that's of shame in me, or doubt or fear, or any weaknessy, humany bits, I'm like, you guys, if you want to judge me, do it. But like, you've got this shit inside yourselves too. Like, we are all one. So that makes me not scared to share it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool. Oh, we could talk for hours. I have so many other questions, but I value your time. So thank you so much for coming on the show
Georgie.
today. It's been awesome. I know so many people are going to resonate with everything that you've just said. If someone wants to reach out to you or find out more about you or follow along with you, you've got your Instagram is a good place to go, and website. Yeah.
So Instagram's at Georgie the naturopath, and my website's georgiecollinson.com. So you can go check out some fun things there. We got a free masterclass on my Instagram, and a free instant calm meditation you can download as well. So lots of goodies to kind of invite you into my world and get started.
Yeah, sounds awesome. And we'll put those in the show notes. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Georgie. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. See you on the next one.
Thank you so much for listening. We so appreciate you. If you'd like to give us extra smiles, drop us a review and spread the love by sharing this episode.
You can also rate your own state of burnout and the root cause contributors by taking our Ending Body Burnout Assessment on our website. And if you're interested in learning about our group or one-on-one Ending Body Burnout programs, shoot us a DM via Instagram or Facebook.
Have the best day ever.